So there's the thing that the vendor was contracted to do, there's the thing that the vendor actually does, and then there's the thing that the client needed to begin with. And the three are rarely the same thing. Business value tends to leak out of the gaps between those three different layers. So how does this happen? Well, it's not something malicious or intentional. It's just a natural consequence of the sales process and the way business needs tend to drift and contracts don't. During the sales process, vendors sell what the client wants. Then they design an operating model, a pricing structure, and a contract for what they think they can deliver. And then they struggle when they operationalize it to meet changing client needs. So the best way to avoid the entire situation to begin with is to put a layer of governance on top of the agreement. Governance is something that's co-developed by the vendor and the client, the two operating teams working together to translate the contractual terms into how the team is going to actually create business value and what objectives they're going to pursue. So you start with that. You start with this visionary statement, this mission statement. The purpose of this agreement, the reason that we're doing business together, why we're in this room together, is we're trying to reduce end user downtime. We're trying to create the most secure environment in the world. We're trying to lower costs, whatever it might be, right? So you work on defining that objective. It's typically a visionary, it's a nebulous kind of statement that's not going to be quantifiable. It's not going to be a SMART goal, but that's not the purpose, right? It's supposed to be that way. Once you have that objective, you can then boil it down into key results. And key results are typically SMART goals, they're quantifiable. So a key result is basically it's the metrics you have to meet in order to say that you've met the objective. So if you're trying to say, we're providing a great end user experience, then one of the key results might be, total user downtime was less than 50 hours over the past month. Now the key results that come from the governance layer are not necessarily the KPIs and the SLAs that are in the contract. The KPIs and SLAs are defining what the vendor's responsibilities are in creating that business value. The key results are what the shared responsibilities are on both sides of the operating team to create that value, right? So it's vendors' agreements versus sometimes internal operating teams. Key results are much more flexible. So as objectives or as the vision for what the service should look like changes, the key results can change as well. Contract terms, SLAs, KPIs typically don't change. They're probably pretty static. And you can kind of flex those KPIs and SLAs and the definition of value within the operating team to some extent without any kind of problem. But at a certain point, you probably need to renegotiate the contract so that the vendor has enough headroom in the deal to be able to afford any kind of extra services that you're asking for. So in other words, I guess in summary, what we're saying is understand the business value you're trying to create with the agreement. Understand that the contract is probably not going to perfectly align with that business value, and then use governance as a way to cover the gap between the two to make sure you're not creating some kind of issue that's going to prevent that value from being created.